Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mera. Thank you so much for joining. Today, my guests are going to be talking about Apna Ghar, my home, which is based in Chicagoland in Illinois. It is a human rights organization that is offering culturally competent services to survivors of gender-based violence. Telling me all about what Apna Ghar has been doing for the last 34 years. I have with me Lulin Tansing. She's the director of programs.
Hi, thank you for having us.
As well as Eva Mavareri, and she's the community engagement coordinator. Let's go first with Lulin. Tell us the mission of Apna Ghar.
The mission of Apna Ghar is to provide comprehensive, culturally competent services and at the same time conduct outreach and advocacy across communities to end gender violence at Apna Ghar. We serve all communities, mainly from the immigrant background in Chicagoland area and beyond. And yeah, that's the goal is to end gender violence.
Many times in many societies, it's a taboo to talk about these issues. Today's show is that people know that they can be empowered even if they are survivors of gender-based violence. Eva Apna Ghar started in 1990. So it's been 34 years now. Share the beginnings of how it all started. What were the challenges that you faced?
So it was started by 5 Asian American women back in '89, solidified in 1990. And the reason why they started was because there were a couple of calls which were coming in through the Indo-American crisis line. And they realized there was a real need for to address gender-based violence, specifically domestic violence, but also the number of the people who are calling in also happen to have different layers in terms of gender violence and and I mean there were a couple of intersectionalities. And as we had, as Lolon said, we serve a huge immigrant community, and most of the people who are calling in were immigrant survivors. And they could not be able to seek the services. They could not be able to access help on the normal, on the mainstream. And one of the things was because also of language barriers. So they saw the need in these, and that's why they came together and said, okay, maybe we can, in response to what was coming through, they formed Apna Ghar. But since then, it has grown from 5. We have a staff of over 30 over the years. From the few number of survivors, it has grown to serve over 100,000 plus survivors, and also diversified in the number in the people who it serves, the population, the target population, to not only South Asian, but to anyone who is a gender-based violence survivor.
You talked about language barriers that becomes a major issue for many survivors of domestic violence, gender violence. Do you have multilingual services?
Oh yes, one of the things which we have done is first our staff, a good number of our staff speak at least 2 or 3 or more languages. And so that in itself helps when people call in through the crisis line. And of course, the other is that we are always able to have interpretation services. And most of the materials, our materials, we have translated them in different languages so that we can be able to reach the communities who we are serving, not only just in the uptown area, but also, within the Illinois environs. But we've also shared these in various conferences and workshops to be able to reach a more, larger audience, and hopefully they can also be able to pick up and provide multilingual services for their potential program participants.
So share some of the services that you're offering. It's not just confined to Chicagoland, but there's legal services or counseling or housing or working with the immigration system.
So in terms of direct services, Dr. Rena. We have a 24-hour crisis line. So anybody who's an immigrant survivor who is who's going through gender-based violence, domestic violence, can call that number. And I can tell you the number right now. It's 773-334-4663, and that's open 24 hours a day. So we provide crisis support in and then we have Safe Home, which is an emergency shelter for those that may need, emergency transit housing. Then we have our, sort of like our second stage of housing, which is transitional, and it's, under the government housing programs. And then we also provide case management slash social services, within Apna Ghar, and we have, these services help survivors to develop, action plans, as in safety, stability, and anything that they may need in terms of case management. And we also provide counseling. So we have two partnerships right now that we have, one with Chicagoland, and the other one is with CASTLE, that's a Chinese American Service League they're located in Chinatown. Then we also provide legal advocacy. So this is when, we provide services. We are not lawyers, but we provide services in terms of the survivor's need for custody, divorce proceedings, order of protection, and sometimes immigration needs.
So you put them in touch with legal aids?
Yeah, we put them in touch. We have referrals that we work with, but most times it's also like documentation preparation, for example, that they needed to get from their lawyer. So we walk them through. Sometimes we assist them, assist the survivors to get them where they needed to be in terms of appointments and anything that may come up according to their needs, because each individual survivor has specific different needs and goals, right? So we provide that. We also provide an in-house supervised visitation exchange program, SVSC it's called, so that we kind of have a space for those that share or do not share custody, but yet they needed to have that visitation time for their children. So they get to come to our Uptown office and do that, 1 hour visitation. So those are kind of, and we have outreach, of course. So this is when our outreach team, Eva being being the coordinator, she can talk more about that.
So I know that you work with the Illinois Department of Health and Human Services, but how do you deepen the engagement of the community at large in this area so that they're more aware of these services, which are free? At the same time, you're empowering the survivors.
So we've been out there making sure that we try as much as possible to make sure that people are aware of domestic violence, to try and make sure that it's a topic which is becoming more easier to talk about, mainly because we serve a diverse population, and in the diversity, people hold various stigmas in terms of gender-based violence. But I'm glad that a good number of community members find the strength to come up and to be able to speak about this. So how we do it is that we partnered with Loyola, and they came up with a service model which was based on a socio-ecological framework, which basically touches on the environment, looks at the individual, then and at the individual level is where we reach them when we are doing our outreach services like tabling. Whenever we have various events, we go to different events in communities, in even places of worship. When they invite us, we are there, because this is where you're meeting families. This is where you're meeting. We go to schools as well. And the idea in terms of schools is to be able to enable for number one, the educators to be aware of the signs and symptoms of domestic violence, so that if they have a student who has been traumatized, they can be able to assist them, because we leave for them resources, not just for our organization, but for also other partner organizations, because the idea is for them to be able to be assisted whenever they want, to seek services. Then on the student, from the student part, we usually offer trainings on peer-to-peer, trainings on healthy relationships, and we also go into universities and colleges. And the reason for this is it's because most of these people are they're the ones who are going to be adults. And so we want to catch early the trauma, so that they can be in a position where they can be able to seek help, for them to know it's not okay to be abused, and also it's not okay to abuse someone else. And where can they be able to link up with these services? And so just encouraging those conversations in community spaces. Then on the other tier, we work at the policy level. Oh, on one thing, in terms of also, we are also going out into libraries, and with the Chicago Department of Public Health, in 2022, we, post-pandemic, we came up with, we partnered in terms of mental health services, because people had undergone a lot of mental health services. And this has been particularly useful because we've reached about 3,000 people in the Chicago, through the Chicago Public Libraries, and families are being assisted. Then we have the policy level, where we work with policymakers to be able to change, to influence policy and change policies which can be able to help, communities, and can alleviate gender-based violence.
Do you work with the district attorney's office as well?
Yes, we've been doing that. We've been conducting different trainings. I know we've conducted trainings together with the legal aid clinics to reach different attorneys, so that we can be able to help, especially with the court interpretation, the language access at the courts level. So this is usually sensitization, so that they are aware of what is going on. But also at the, in the Chicago, at the mayor's office, we are also there with at the Gender-Based Violence Task Force. Our executive director sits on that. And also on the Immigration Task Force, we also have one of our team members who sits on that.
I see. Yes. Where do you see Apna Ghar in the next 5 years now?
Our plan, our goal is always, whether it's a 2-year plan, 10 years plan, it's always going to be gender-based, domestic violence survivor centric. So no matter how many years pass, I think that's always going to remain the same. And in terms of, looking at the issues, so we will remain with trying to eradicate this gender-based violence, as domestic violence, as much as possible. And so while saying that, like, we would see ourselves more in terms of serving more people from the communities, reaching out to. Right now, we have a good presence in the Chicagoland area, in the city, within, in the parameter of uptown. Anyways, we are there for every, our outreach should know better. We are there, but probably in the other areas of outside of Chicagoland area, for example, we wish to be more present, and we want to encompass and spread that awareness in areas besides just the city.
I think awareness is so very important, that nobody's alone. That's how you empower people, bring more self-efficacy in survivors. I just want to give out the hotline number again.
It's 773-334-4663.
Have a text line for those who may not be able to call, but they can be able to text help, and somebody from our crisis department will be able to get back to them. It's 773-899-1041. 773-899-1041.
Thank you, Lula Tonsing and Eva Mavareri. I am Dr. Renee Mera. Stay healthy, stay positive.